Yeah, hello. This is a video that I don't want to do and I have to do. You know, I'm tired. I'm tired of the corruption of boxing. I'm tired of the lies to the media. I'm tired of them covering up stories. Yeah, and the reason this is so serious is because it involves a young woman who's in a coma. Yeah, at this stage we don't know whether she can make it or not, and I pray that she does. Yeah, the events surrounding it, how the fight was allowed to happen. Yeah. The record of this lady going into the contest. Yeah, the British Boxing Board of Control and their handling of the situation. Yeah. The little press, how little press has been given to this situation. Right. Legitimacy of female boxing and whether this is a reason that it's been hidden. Yeah, but what we're talking about at the end of the day is a young lady who came over and was given a short term fight to fight for a world title, an alleged world title. Yeah, and ended up in a coma. And the fact that you'll find almost nothing about this in the press, right? And I'm talking about Alejandra Ayala, a fighter from Mexico, right? Now, she came over to fight Hannah Rankin, who is alleged world champion in two organizations. If you want to recognize them, the IBO and another one, right? So we'll just start off with what happened. So she fought. So Alejandra Ayala came over and fought a girl from Scotland called Hannah Rankin, who, as I said, is a professional bassoonist and didn't have any amateur fights. Is not very good, but she's allegedly a world champion, right? And she fought Alejandra in a fight, and they women's fights, remember, 10-2s. The most for world championships, and she stopped her in the 10th round, and he absolutely exhausted Ayala in the 10th round. Ayala had given nothing. I mean, she tried obviously, but she was clearly out of her class. Yeah, she clearly wasn't fit. Yeah, she got sent out for the last round. She was absolutely exhausted. Right. The fight wasn't stopped until she was battered on the ropes in the 10th and stopped. And this woman, unfortunately, is in a coma. She's had two surgeries, right? So it's obviously serious. To remove a hematoma on her brain. And she is still in intensive care in a Scottish hospital. And this is over a week later from the fight. Now, you check all the main newspapers, even the local newspapers, you'll find almost nothing about this. It hasn't been updated. Her condition has been updated for 3 or 4 days, right? We don't know what's happening. I mean, this poor woman came over to take a small payday, no doubt. She was absolutely outclassed. She had no business being in that fight against an alleged world-class opponent. Okay, Hannah Rankin is not exactly a high-class opponent, but many of these females are not very skilled, but she's still fit, strong. Yeah. And, we're going to have to... And it gets way worse, by the way. It gets way, way worse what happened. When you dig in it, right, heads are going to have to roll here. I don't think they will. We'll get on to that later, right? But I'm talking about the promoters, Rankin herself, the British Boxing Board of Control, and the World Boxing Organizations. This is a serious story, and should have a serious impact on boxing, especially female boxing. Will it? I don't know, man. That depends on the completely corrupt mainstream media, whether they make a story out of it. And they won't, probably. They won't. Whatever happens. And I pray to God, and I have done, by the way. I am a Christian. I told people for her recovery of Alejandra, and God bless her. But let's listen to the details. So the first thing we want to imagine is, what was Alejandra Ayala doing in the ring against the world champion? Okay. Now, obviously, we know that there isn't very much depth in boxing, in women's boxing, right? This is a 33-year-old woman who was fighting for world championship. Now, she had never scored a single victory, against the women who had a winning record, except one girl, right? Except one girl. And that girl is called Karen Garcia. Now we look at Karen Garcia's record. Yeah, she'd won twice against debutantes who never fought again when she fought Ayala. Yeah, and she lost on points. So Ayala's only victory against a winning fighter is Karen Garcia, who has only won against debutantes. And her record after the fight as well, her overall record of the opponents that she's won against has been 0 wins and 9 losses. Yeah. I mean, that's their updated record. When Garcia fought these women, the first one was a debutante, the second one was a debutante, then she lost to Ayala, then she won against a debutante, then she won against a woman who'd only who'd only had one fight and lost it. In her last fight, she lost against a woman who had a record of 0 wins and 3 losses, right? And the overall record of her wins now up to date is 0 wins and 9 losses. Yeah, so that is Ayala's only win against a fighter with a winning record. Yeah, in other words, a woman who shouldn't be close to the world level, right? Yeah, and you look at Ayala's record, okay? Now she has an overall record. The people she's beaten has the people she's beaten has an overall record of 31 wins and 80 losses. Yeah, and that includes she's fought one girl 3 times, who has a record of. Now this woman has a record of 7 wins and 23 losses, 13 of which by KO. Right, that's actually the best record she's got. This woman, Silvia Zuniga. Yeah. Anytime she's ever stepped up, she got beat. And she hasn't won a single round against anyone vaguely world-class. And there's only 2 people she's fought in world-class. Marie-Eve Dicker from Canada. Yeah, she fought twice. Yeah. And she fought 2 fights. 18 rounds total she fought this lady. And she didn't win a single round. Okay? The other world-class fighter was Savannah Marshall. Yeah, who she fought when both of them were weighing in the super middleweight division. Savannah had only 2 wins, and Savannah knocked her out in 2 rounds. Okay, she knocked her out in 2 rounds. So obviously she didn't. I'm not laughing. She didn't win a single round there. Yeah, she lost her debut at lightweight against a Beatriz Aguilar. Yeah, on a 4-point decision. A 4-round decision. Yeah. A woman who now has a record of 7-7 and 1 draw. Okay, so this woman has never ever beaten any fighter with a winning record except one who only had wins against debutants. She's never beaten a world-class fighter. Yeah? She's 33 years old. She's boxed as a lightweight in her debut, and she's moved up the weights a lot. She went from lightweight to super middleweight, right? And then she was dropped in against a world champion defense and stopped in 10 rounds. Now, what on earth is this lady doing fighting for a world title? Yeah, I mean, she's never beaten a world class opponent. She's never beaten, apart from one, a woman with a winning record. All she's done is beat up. Is win against people that are non-entities with losing records. Not only that, it gets worse, right? So, 3 previous fights before fighting Hannah Rankin, yeah, she won against Milagros Diaz Perez, who has a record of 1 win and 13 losses. Yeah, and she won that over 6 rounds. Previous to that, she fought Maria Guadalupe Duran in Tijuana, who had a record of 2 wins and 3 losses. And this prior to that, so the 3rd fight before she fought Rankin, she fought a girl called Claudia Rangel Gonzalez, who had a record of 1 win and 2 losses, and Gonzalez beat her on decision, right? And one of the judges, I know you can't always trust him, had Gonzalez winning every round. Yeah, and this Gonzalez has a current record of 2 wins and 5 losses. So we're saying that this woman, Alejandra Ayala. You know, I'm not being disrespectful. My thoughts are with her. And I mean, genuinely, my prayers are with her. People always say that, oh, thoughts and prayers are with her. And by the way, you know, we'll find out what other people are saying about her. Rankin and the promoters, all they said is thoughts and prayers are with her. We pray for her. None of them have, like, updated on what's happened to this poor lady. Right? Yeah. So prior to fight for the world title, she fought someone with a 1-13 record and won on unanimous decision. So what are you going to say about that? Well, right, and it gets way darker, by the way. But at this point, you're like, there's no way there's no way Alejandra Ayala should be fighting for a world title, or even a national title, or an intercontinental title, with that kind of record. Her overall record, by the way, is 14-6. Well, now it's 14-6. It was 14-5 then, you know, which isn't too bad. But when you look at what she's beaten people that debutantes, people that had very badly losing records, and she's been thrown in at age 33 for a world title fight on away soil against Hannah Rankin. Okay, just think about that, right? What is she doing there? Okay, why did the WBA allow this? Why did the British Boxing Board of Control say, yeah, that's okay, you can defend your world title against someone who 2 fights before got beaten by a woman with a record of 1 win and 2 losses, and your last fight was a woman who had 1 win and 13 losses. Oh no, I mean, and they're saying, yeah, that's fine. Of course, you should fight for a world title. Yeah. Now, I don't totally buy. You know, people say, oh, the mismatches they cause problems, and people can get killed now. You know, most boxing fights, especially prospects early on, are mismatches, but you know, they're few rounds. Yeah, they don't involve the weight making. Whenever you have if you notice, most fights where people get hurt, there's a weight making necessity. You have to get under a certain weight because it's for a championship. Yeah, and also when you get fighters getting hurt, most of the fighters will get hurt late on, like round 10, 11, 12, this kind of thing. Right? There's very few fights that are, you know, mismatches or not. There are some exceptions, but there are very few fights when a fighter will get stopped in the early rounds and have some kind of brain trauma. You know, it's largely a long fight, round-wise, and a weight-making fight. Okay, and this is going to be important when I give you more details. But what's clear at this stage is there is under no circumstances should Alejandra Ayala be fighting for a world title. She's done nothing. Why did the British Boxing Board of Control sanction a world championship fight? Why did the WBA sanction a world title fight? Why did the promoters take on a world title fight against a woman who was utterly out of her depth? Okay, so to be clear now, we know this fight shouldn't have happened, at least not for a world title, okay? But it gets way worse, right? Now, you cannot find this, by the way, in the British press, in the British media. Yeah, so I had to look at Mexican media, Mexican publications, right? And let's get one. This is from a Mexican newspaper called La Opinión, okay? And this is the translation. This is the headline. I was warned. Alejandra Ayala, a Mexican boxer in a coma, was notified in 2018 of a probable brain tumor. So this poor lady, right, had been diagnosed with a very likely brain tumor. Yeah. And when was it? When did this happen? This is where it gets bad. We're not talking about some two-bob country or, you know, without a boxing commission. This is in Britain, the British Boxing Board of Control. Yeah, the British Boxing Board of Control, before she fought Savannah Marshall, yeah, found this anomaly on her test. Right, a guy called Dennis Gilmartin, a member of the British Boxing Board of Control, right, notified the Mexican boxing authorities on an email. Yeah, 10 days after her fight with Marshall. The message warned about a possible problem in the brain of the Mexican boxer. Yeah, and so this La Opinión has looked at the email, and it has been verified. It's been verified by an organization called Cancha, right? And it was sent 10 days after she lost by knockout in June 15, 2018 by Savannah Marshall. It reported the results of the tests that were performed on Alejandra, who, despite reporting a possible program, was allowed to fight and knocked out by Savannah Marshall. So she shouldn't have even have had that fight with Savannah Marshall, right? Yeah, especially a puncher like Savannah. Yeah, Ayala underwent an MRI and a magnetic resonance angiography of the brain, and this is what was in the email. This is from Dennis of the British Boxing Board of Control. I must confirm that Ayala was approved by the British Boxing Board of Control medical officers after findings of this report. However, I consider that the correct thing is to notify you of the findings so that Ayala can have this taken into account for future. Yeah, right. This is medical stuff. I'm not a surgeon, right? But it is inconsequential intracranial findings of a possible meningioma of 3 millimeters in left anterior convexity. This can be confirmed by the MRI. Now, what that means is a tumor, a possible potential tumor in the brain of 3 millimeters. So not only was she allowed to fight Savannah Marshall, a known puncher, right? The British Boxing Board of Control were aware of this when they okayed Rankin. Yeah, and it gets way worse. So Ayala, was told to have further checks, to find out about the tumor if it had grown, and it said, allegedly by these doctors, in the worst case scenario, this tumor could have grown to say 1.5 or 2 centimeters, and a blow to the head can cause this to rupture and cause severe brain damage, right? The follow-up had to be done. This is what the doctor says, because there are lesions that have a very variable growth rate. Sometimes they stay that way, sometimes they grow. For it to reach a size of important medical relevance, 4 or 5 years have to pass. Therefore, what this doctor is saying is extremely dangerous for Ayala to fight again, especially 4 or 5 years later. Now, she is from Mexico. Now, we all know the Mexican commissions are not that strict. She's from Tijuana. And Tijuana, I'm sorry to say, is a bit of a cowboy state when it comes to regulation. And then she didn't have any follow-ups. She didn't have any follow-up checks. And she came over to the UK, despite the 2008 diagnosis about a potentially dangerous tumor in her head, and she was allowed to fight Hannah Rankin for the world title. Now, we don't know. I mean, I assume she had a new MRI and a new checkup. You'd assume so before she was allowed to fight Rankin. So, I mean, what, did they show this tumor had disappeared? There was no such thing. Even if it had, you would still be a bit nervous. I mean, you'd have to have rigorous checks here. Rigorous checks for insurance purposes, for all kinds of purposes. Did these happen? We don't know yet. Why? The British Boxing Board of Control have made zero announcements about this. The only thing on their Twitter is an announcement congratulating Hannah Rankin on beating Ayala. There's nothing on their website, nothing on their Twitter, nothing on their Facebook. There's nothing from the promoter. The only thing you get from Dennis Hobson is, I think it was a great fight and Hannah Rankin did really well, and I think the referee stopped it at the right time. Now I watched that fight, right? By the way, it's all been taken off. You can't find footage of this fight anymore. Fight Zone, who relayed it. And again, I'm sorry about my dog snoring, but because this is a serious video, but I'm very passionate about this. So did this lady run through the test? We don't know. She should have done, obviously. Why the British Boxing Board of Control being so quiet? Rankin said nothing except possibly defend herself. She said, obviously, my thoughts and prayers are with Ayala, which is fine. You expect that. I mean, those are just words anyway, right? And then she retweeted someone else who was saying, who was defending Rankin about the injury, saying, and this was all she said on it. Hobson said nothing. Dennis, there's a guy here who, Fight Zone is also extremely worthy of attention here. Okay? There's a guy called Sam Kinnock, who's got Sam Kinnock Boxing. And he has been linked to having, conversations with MTK, and David Kinahan. He's denied, any association there, right? Now, Kinnock, I don't know what his part is, but there's the company that aired this video called Fight Zone, right? Now, about about a month ago, all the Fight Zone URLs, the websites, were taken off the air, so they don't exist anymore. So they obviously rebranded, they relaunched themselves. They got a new website now, yeah, fightzone.uk, whereas before it's fightzone.tv and fightzone.live or something, yeah. And you go on Fight Zone, there's nothing there at all. It's a very unprofessional site. Yeah, this is meant to be a channel that airs live British fights, and it's just if you look at the website fightzone.uk, there's almost nothing there. Yeah, it's log in, sign up. Yeah, and that's it. There's not about us. There's not what do we offer. It's obviously been rushed, this Fight Zone thing. Why? Well, it's got nothing to do with the Rankin Ayala fight. Obviously, it's got to do with the MTK links, right? But how deep are they now? What's going on now? Yeah. You've got a woman now who's in a coma, and I hope to God she makes it out. Yeah. And they are covering themselves. You can't find any footage of this fight either, which is understandable in many ways. Okay. But imagine that, right? You got a woman with a very dodgy medical history with a possible brain tumor who was allowed to fight for a world title 4 years after the tumor was found, and she was still allowed by the British Boxing Board of Control to fight Savannah Marshall with a brain irregularity. What is going on, man? Who's going to be held account for this? Well, it's big, man. The British Boxing Board of Control. We're going to have to know. The promoter, Kynot, Fight Zone. The promoter Hobson and Kynot. I don't even know what's going on exactly there, right? But all these guys, I mean, they've allowed a woman to come in who had absolutely no right to be there, statistically, her record, her fights, and medically, to be put in a coma, basically, right? And it gets worse. I'm sorry, it gets worse again. So this lady, I looked at Alejandra at the weigh-in and stuff like that, and she was, completely, she was out of shape, man. I'm sorry to say. She had, her body looked unworked out. She had dimples on her thighs and buttocks, that makes you look like someone hasn't trained properly. She's 33. Yeah. She once had a fight at 135 pounds. Now she's fighting 160. Right now, these allegations. Now I want to move on to this. So I've had people that have alleged, right, that Ayala couldn't make the weight. Yeah, she couldn't. These allegations, but we need to look at them, right? And it's starting to make sense now. Yeah, Ayala couldn't make the weight, right? Now it's very clear to say these are allegations at this stage, but she was well over the weight, and there was no way she was going to make it. And supposedly the Rankin team said, "No, you've got to make the weight, otherwise you lose the fight." And if she didn't make the weight, then that means she loses her payday, which would have been huge, but she loses her payday, and she's come over here for the payday, obviously. She's obviously desperate for money. Why would you take that risk for your life if you didn't need the money? Yeah? So she was forced to sit in a sauna and lose a lot of weight. Yeah. Now, I've already told you about how most brain injuries happen when someone has had to struggle at the weight and when they've had to fight a lot of rounds and take a lot of blows to the head. This is exactly what happened in the fight. Ayala didn't have a chance. She just got her head clubbed again. She was tough. She got her head clubbed again and again and again. Yeah. Like I said, I watched part of the fight, and at the end, she was exhausted. She shouldn't have been. Some people say she shouldn't have been let out for the 10th round. They should say the ref, the doctor, or the corner. The corner should have stopped it, but she got let out. Yeah. The damage might have already been done. We don't know. Yeah. Dennis Hobson said, we thought it was fine stoppage. It was completely right. Okay. Well, whatever, man. She was utterly outclassed, this girl. Right? So now we're left with a lot of questions, an awful lot of questions. So now, I mean, what's going to happen now? We've had a woman with medical issues, brain issues. She's been allowed to fight previously in the UK and get knocked out. Yeah, and the British Boxing Board of Control even sent an email to the Mexican board to say, look, you got to watch on this girl. Yeah, you got to fight. She needs some follow-up tests and that. Yeah, because apparently, and then the Mexican doctor said, yeah, this is a very dangerous condition, and it can grow very severely and cause problems, and the blows to the head can cause a brain injury, which it did. Right, so we need to know. Right, hang on. So the Boxing Board of Control said it's 2018, and they let this fight come over, despite the fight that she had no business fighting in world class. Yeah, yeah. Why are the mainstream media reporting this? I mean, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you my theories. And some people say, oh, it's because Ayala, it wasn't a heavily televised fight, and Ayala is Mexican. By that they mean, she's not British, so her profile isn't high in this country. Yes, that would have something to do with it, but that doesn't excuse it. You're talking about someone with a severe brain injury. Now, if that happens any time in boxing, it gets reported. Why is it not being reported here? Especially as it's a woman. Yeah, I don't know if there's been any female deaths in boxing. I think it's been one in like the Far East or something. But it should be big news if the mainstream media was fair, which we know it isn't. We know they're trying to protect an agenda of pushing. Women are able to do exactly the same as men, and men are the same as women, and two become one. But I'm not even going to go into too much of that because I don't want to belittle what's happened to Ayala, right, and her plight. She has been allowed to risk her life, despite having brain issues 4 years ago, and the British Boxing Board of Control knew it. Yeah, she was possibly forced to make the weight, even though she couldn't, and she spent the entire fight being effectively battered and stopped late. And now she's in a coma, and she's had two surgeries, not one, two surgeries. Now, I hope to God she will come through unscathed. But this is very serious. Why the press not reporting? Why I got no updates in the UK for 6 days was the last one I could find. 6 days ago was just reported that she'd been injured. Yeah. Why have none of these people, the Boxing Board of Control, Kynoch, Dennis Hobson, Hannah Rankin, why have they said nothing about this except our thoughts and prayers are with you at the most? There's something big here. Could it get legal? Yeah. If I was Ayala's family, I'd be, consulting lawyers. It's not, obviously you can't bring the health back, but people need to pay for this. Yeah? Could it bring down the Boxing Board of Control? Yes, I believe so. There's a possibility that'll come to an out-of-court settlement, though. This happens a lot when you're dealing with people that of poorer background. You pay them off. Yeah, I'm making no accusations about the British Boxing Board of Control, other than they've been completely incompetent here. Yeah, and we await the results of knowing if they did another scan, what the medical was like when she came to the UK, knowing, that she had a potential brain tumor on the brain 4 years ago when she fought Savannah Marshall. Yeah, we need to know, and this is for the girl involved, her family. Yeah, and the goodness of boxing, because this is serious and involving people's lives now. All right, with regret. Again, I ask you all to pray for her, this Alejandra, and not to let this go and question the board. Thanks.